Marcus Thompson stood outside the courthouse doors, taking deep breaths of the cold morning air. His hands shook as he held a thick folder filled with papers. Inside that folder was everything he needed to prove he was a good father. Today was the day he would finally get his daughter back. He looked at his watch. It was almost 9 in the morning. The hearing would start soon. Marcus had waited 6 months for this day. 6 long months without seeing his little girl, Zoe. 6 months of empty weekends and quiet dinners. 6 months of missing her laugh and her bedtime stories. Marcus walked through the heavy courthouse doors. His footsteps echoed in the big hallway. People in suits walked quickly past him, talking on their phones and carrying briefcases. Everyone looked important and busy. Marcus felt out of place in his best suit, the one he wore to job interviews and church. He found the right courtroom and sat down on a wooden bench. The room was bigger than he expected. The ceiling was high and everything was painted in dark colors. At the front of the room sat a large wooden desk where the judge would sit. Marcus had never been in a courtroom before. It felt cold and scary. His lawyer, Mr. Davis, arrived a few minutes later. Mr. Davis was a thin man with gray hair and glasses. He carried a worn leather briefcase and looked tired. Marcus had hired him with money he borrowed from his brother. It was all the money Marcus had, but he would have paid anything to get Zoe back. "Good morning, Marcus," Mr. Davis said, sitting down beside him. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus nodded, though his stomach was full of butterflies. "I have all the papers you asked for," he said, patting his folder. "Report cards, letters from her teachers, pictures of us together, everything." Mr. Davis looked through the papers quickly. "This is good," he said. "The judge will see that you're a caring father. Zoe's grades were better when she lived with you. Her teachers all say good things about you. This should help our case." At exactly 9 o'clock, a woman in uniform called out, "All rise for Judge Harrison." Everyone in the courtroom stood up as a tall man in black robes walked in. Judge Harrison had gray hair and a serious face. He looked like he had been a judge for many years. He sat down at his big desk and looked out at the courtroom. "You may be seated," Judge Harrison said in a deep voice. Marcus sat down, his heart beating fast. This man would decide if he could see his daughter again. This man held Marcus's whole world in his hands. "We are here today for the custody case of Thompson versus Thompson," the judge said, looking at some papers. "Mr. Thompson, you are requesting a change in custody arrangements for your daughter Zoe Thompson, age 8. Marcus stood up when the judge called his name. "Yes, Your Honor," he said, his voice quiet and nervous. "Speak up," Judge Harrison said, not looking at Marcus. "I can't hear you." "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said louder. "I want my daughter back. I want to be part of her life again." The judge looked at Marcus for the first time. His eyes were cold and distant. Marcus felt like the judge was looking right through him, not really seeing him at all. "Mr. Davis," the judge said to Marcus's lawyer, "present your case." Mr. Davis stood up and began to speak. He told the judge about Marcus's job as an engineer at a local company. He talked about Marcus's clean record, his stable income, and his good character. He showed the judge letters from Marcus's boss and co-workers, all saying that Marcus was a responsible and honest man. "Your Honor," Mr. Davis said, "my client has a steady job making $50,000 a year. He owns his home. He has no criminal record. He is a devoted father who loves his daughter very much." Judge Harrison looked bored. He tapped his pen on his desk and looked at his watch. Marcus felt his heart sink. The judge didn't seem to care about anything Mr. Davis was saying. Mr. Davis continued, "Mr. Thompson has tried many times to see his daughter. He has followed all the rules of the current custody agreement, but his ex-wife has made it very difficult for him to spend time with Zoe." Marcus thought about all the times Sarah had canceled his visits at the last minute. She would call and say Zoe was sick or that they had other plans. Sometimes she wouldn't answer the phone at all. Marcus would drive to her house and find it empty. He never knew where his daughter was. "What proof do you have of these claims?" Judge Harrison asked, still not really looking at Marcus or his lawyer. Mr. Davis opened Marcus's folder. "We have phone records showing Mr. Thompson's attempts to contact his daughter. We have emails where he asked for makeup visits that were denied. We have a log that Mr. Thompson kept of every canceled visit. Marcus had written down every missed call, every broken promise, every time he sat in his car outside Sarah's empty house. It hurt to remember all those times, but he had kept careful records. He wanted to show everyone that he never gave up trying to see Zoe. The judge barely looked at the papers Mr. Davis gave him. He flipped through them quickly like he was looking at a magazine he didn't want to read. "Your Honor," Marcus said, standing up suddenly. His voice was stronger now, filled with all the pain and love he felt for his daughter. "I just want to be Zoe's father. I want to help her with her homework and take her to school. I want to be there when she's sick and when she's happy. I want to watch her grow up." Judge Harrison looked annoyed that Marcus had spoken without being asked. "Mr. Thompson, you will speak only when I tell you to speak," he said sharply. Marcus felt his face get hot with embarrassment, but he didn't sit down. "Your Honor, please just look at the papers. Look at what her teachers say. Look at her grades when she lived with me. I'm a good father. Zoe needs me." "Mr. Thompson, sit down," the judge said, his voice getting louder. "I will not have outbursts in my courtroom." Marcus sat down slowly, his hands shaking. He looked around the courtroom and saw other people watching him. Some looked sorry for him. Others looked away, uncomfortable with what they were seeing. Mr. Davis put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Let me handle this," he whispered. But Marcus felt like he was drowning. The judge wasn't listening. The papers that proved he was a good father sat ignored on the judge's desk. All the love he had for Zoe, all the nights he lay awake missing her, all the birthday parties and school plays he had missed. None of it seemed to matter. The cold courtroom felt like it was getting smaller. The high ceiling seemed to press down on Marcus. He thought about Zoe, probably getting ready for school right now. Did she wonder where her daddy was? Did she miss him too? Marcus closed his eyes and said a silent prayer. He prayed that somehow, someway, justice would find its way into this cold courtroom. He prayed that love would be stronger than whatever was keeping him from his little girl. He opened his eyes and looked at Judge Harrison, who was reading other papers now, not even paying attention to Marcus's case anymore. Marcus felt his last bit of hope starting to slip away. Judge Harrison put down the papers he was reading and looked at Marcus with tired eyes. Marcus felt hope rise in his chest. Maybe now the judge would really listen to him. "Mr. Thompson," the judge said slowly, "tell me about your living situation." Marcus stood up again, trying to keep his voice steady. "I live in a 3-bedroom house on Maple Street, Your Honor. It's in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. Zoe has her own room there with all her toys and books." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Maple Street," he repeated. "That's in the Riverside area, isn't it?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said, not understanding why that mattered. Judge Harrison made a note on his paper. "And what kind of neighborhood would you say that is, Mr. Thompson?" Marcus felt confused. "It's a good neighborhood, Your Honor. Safe streets, nice families. The neighbors all know each other and look out for one another." "I see," the judge said, but his tone suggested he didn't approve. "And tell me, what do you do for fun, Mr. Thompson? What activities would you and your daughter participate in?" Marcus smiled for the first time that morning, thinking about all the things he and Zoe loved to do together. "We go to the park on Saturdays. Zoe loves the swings. We have picnics and fly kites. Sometimes we go to the library and read books together. She loves stories about princesses and dragons." "The park," Judge Harrison repeated, writing something down. "Which park is that?" "Riverside Park, Your Honor. It's just 2 blocks from my house. Very safe, lots of families go there." The judge nodded slowly, but Marcus couldn't tell if he was pleased or not. "And what about your work schedule, Mr. Thompson? Can you really provide the kind of stability a young girl needs?" Marcus felt his confidence growing. This was something he could prove easily. "I work regular hours, Your Honor. Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I'm never late and I rarely miss work. My boss says I'm one of his most reliable employees." "Engineering work," the judge said, looking at his papers. "That must require you to travel sometimes, doesn't it? Long hours, overnight trips?" "No, Your Honor," Marcus said quickly. "I work in the office every day. I design computer systems for local businesses. I'm always home by 6 o'clock for dinner." Judge Harrison looked doubtful. "Really? In my experience, men in your situation often have trouble keeping steady jobs. How long have you been with this company?" Marcus felt a stab of anger, but tried to keep it out of his voice. 5 years, Your Honor. I was promoted twice. I've never been fired from any job." The judge said, making another note. "And what about your social life, Mr. Thompson? Do you bring different women around your daughter?" Marcus felt his face get hot. "No, Your Honor. I haven't dated anyone seriously since my divorce. Zoe is my priority. When I have her, we spend all our time together. That seems unusual for a man your age, Judge Harrison said. Don't you think a child needs to see healthy relationships modeled for them? Marcus didn't know how to answer that. Everything he said seemed to be wrong somehow. If he dated, the judge would think he was irresponsible. If he didn't date, the judge thought that was strange too. Mr. Davis stood up. Your Honor, if I may. Mr. Thompson's personal life has no bearing on his ability to parent his daughter. The evidence shows that he provides a stable, loving home. Judge Harrison waved his hand dismissively. I'll decide what's relevant, Mr. Davis. Marcus looked around the courtroom and noticed something that made his stomach sink. Earlier that morning, before Marcus's case, there had been another custody hearing. A white man named Johnson had been asking for more time with his children. Marcus had arrived early and heard part of that case. Mr. Johnson lived in an apartment, not a house. He worked part-time and had been laid off twice in the past year. He had admitted to dating several women since his divorce. But Judge Harrison had been kind to Mr. Johnson, asking friendly questions and smiling. The judge had given Mr. Johnson extra weekend visits and vacation time with his children. Marcus realized that Mr. Johnson's situation was much less stable than his own, but the judge had treated Mr. Johnson like a caring father who deserved more time with his kids. Marcus had the better job, the better home, and the more stable life, but Judge Harrison was treating him like he was dangerous. Mr. Thompson, the judge continued, I'm concerned about the influences in your neighborhood. What kind of people live around you? Marcus felt anger building in his chest. Working families, Your Honor. Teachers, store managers, a nurse, a mechanic. Good people who care about their children and their community. And you feel that environment is appropriate for a young girl? Yes, Your Honor, absolutely, Marcus said, his voice getting stronger. Zoe loves that neighborhood. She has friends there. Mrs. Garcia, next door, babysits her sometimes and teaches her Spanish. Mr. Williams across the street is a retired teacher who helps her with her math homework. Judge Harrison looked skeptical. Mr. Thompson, I have to think about what's really best for this child. Young girls need structure, proper guidance, the right kind of influences. Marcus felt like screaming. What was wrong with structure? What was wrong with loving neighbors who cared about Zoe? What was wrong with a father who came home every night and helped with homework? Your Honor, Marcus said, trying to stay calm, I can give Zoe everything she needs. Love, stability, a good education. I've never missed a parent-teacher conference. I coached her soccer team last year. I help with her school fundraisers. Soccer, the judge said, writing something down. Interesting choice of sport for a girl. Marcus stared at the judge. Zoe loved soccer. She was good at it. She had scored 3 goals in the last game Marcus had watched. What was wrong with soccer? Mr. Davis tried again. Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows that Mr. Thompson is an involved, loving father. His daughter's grades improved when she lived with him. Her teachers praise his involvement in her education. Judge Harrison finally looked at the school reports Mr. Davis had submitted. He flipped through them quickly, barely reading them. These are from last year, he said. Children change quickly at this age. What worked before might not work now. But, Your Honor, Marcus said, standing up again, nothing has changed except that I can't see her. I'm still the same father. I still love her the same way. She still needs me. Mr. Thompson, the court has to consider many factors, Judge Harrison said coldly. A child's needs are complex. There are social considerations, cultural factors, the importance of proper role models. Marcus felt the room spinning. What did that mean? What social considerations? What cultural factors? He was Zoe's father. He had been her father since the day she was born. He had changed her diapers, taught her to ride a bike, kissed her scraped knees, and read her bedtime stories every night for 8 years. Mrs. Patterson, an older black woman sitting in the back of the courtroom, shook her head sadly. She had been through family court herself and knew what she was seeing. Her grandson sat beside her, watching everything with wide eyes. Mrs. Patterson put her arm around the boy and whispered, Sometimes the world isn't fair, baby, but we keep fighting anyway. A young white couple near the front of the courtroom looked uncomfortable. They had watched the Johnson case earlier, and now they were seeing how differently Judge Harrison treated Marcus. The woman whispered to her husband, This isn't right. Her husband nodded and squeezed her hand. Marcus felt alone in the big courtroom, even with all these people watching. He felt like he was shouting into a deep well, and his voice was just echoing back at him. Every answer he gave seemed to make things worse. Every proof of his love for Zoe seemed to count for nothing. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice breaking, "please just tell me what I need to do. Tell me what would make you believe that I'm a good father. I'll do anything. I'll take classes, move to a different neighborhood, change jobs. Just tell me what you want and I'll do it." Judge Harrison looked at Marcus for a long moment. "Mr. Thompson, this isn't about what you want or what I want. This is about what's best for the child. And sometimes what's best for a child might not be what a parent expects." Marcus felt his world crashing down around him. The judge had already decided. Nothing Marcus said mattered. All the evidence of his love, all the proof of his good character, all the years of being a devoted father, none of it was enough. Mr. Davis opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. Marcus watched his lawyer's face and saw determination there. Maybe there was still hope. Maybe all the evidence Marcus had collected would finally make the judge understand. "Your Honor," Mr. Davis said, "I would like to present evidence that shows Mr. Thompson's positive impact on his daughter's life and well-being." Judge Harrison looked at his watch and sighed. "Make it quick, Mr. Davis. I have other cases to hear today." Mr. Davis walked to the judge's desk and handed him a folder. "These are Zoe's report cards from when she lived with her father compared to her grades after the separation." Marcus held his breath as the judge opened the folder. Inside were copies of all of Zoe's school reports. When Zoe lived with Marcus, she got mostly A's and B's. Her teachers wrote comments like, "Zoe is well prepared for class and she completes all her homework on time, and Zoe participates actively in class discussions." After Marcus and Sarah separated and Zoe went to live with her mother, everything changed. Zoe's grades dropped to C's and D's. She started missing homework assignments. Her teachers wrote worried notes like, "Zoe seems distracted in class, and she appears tired and has trouble concentrating, and please contact me to discuss Zoe's recent struggles." "As you can see, Your Honor," Mr. Davis explained, "Zoe's academic performance was significantly better when she lived with my client. Her grades dropped noticeably after the separation." Judge Harrison glanced at the report cards for maybe 10 seconds. "Children often struggle with divorce," he said dismissively. "This could be caused by many factors," Marcus wanted to shout. Of course Zoe was struggling with the divorce. She was struggling because she missed her father. She was struggling because she couldn't understand why she couldn't live with him anymore. She was struggling because her whole world had been turned upside down. Mr. Davis tried again. "Your Honor, I also have letters from Zoe's teachers praising Mr. Thompson's involvement in her education." He handed the judge another set of papers. Marcus remembered asking each of Zoe's teachers to write these letters. It had been embarrassing to explain his situation, but every teacher had been happy to help. Mrs. Chen, Zoe's second-grade teacher, had written, "Mr. Thompson was one of the most involved parents I've ever worked with. He volunteered for field trips, helped with classroom activities, and always made sure Zoe was prepared for school. Zoe clearly adores her father and lights up whenever he's around." Mr. Rodriguez, her third-grade teacher, wrote, "Mr. Thompson attended every parent-teacher conference and school event. He helped Zoe with her science project, which won first place in the school fair. He is clearly a loving and dedicated father." Ms. Williams, Zoe's current teacher, had written the most recent letter. "I have noticed a significant change in Zoe since she stopped living with her father. She used to be one of my brightest students, but now she seems sad and withdrawn. I believe she would benefit greatly from having more time with Mr. Thompson." Judge Harrison barely looked at these letters. He flipped through them like he was shuffling a deck of cards. "Teachers don't always understand the full picture of a family situation," he said. Marcus felt his heart breaking. These teachers knew Zoe better than anyone except Marcus himself. They saw her every day. They knew how happy and confident she was when she lived with her father. How could the judge dismiss their opinion so easily? "Your Honor," Mr. Davis continued, "I also have documentation of Mr. Thompson's attempts to maintain his relationship with his daughter, despite the obstacles he has faced." Mr. Davis showed the judge a thick binder that Marcus had put together. Inside were copies of every email Marcus had sent to Sarah asking to see Zoe. There were phone records showing all the times Marcus had called, trying to speak to his daughter. There were photos of birthday presents Marcus had bought for Zoe. presents that Sarah had refused to give her. Marcus had kept track of everything. When Sarah canceled a visit, he wrote down the date and reason. When she didn't answer his calls, he made a note. When she moved without telling him Zoe's new address, he documented his efforts to find them. This shows a clear pattern, Mr. Davis explained. Ms. Thompson has consistently interfered with Mr. Thompson's parental rights. She has canceled visits at the last minute, refused to allow phone calls, and even moved to a different city without informing my client. Judge Harrison looked through the binder for less than a minute. Divorced couples often have disagreements about visitation, he said. These appear to be normal custody disputes. Normal? Marcus thought. It was normal for a mother to keep a father from seeing his child. It was normal to cancel visits when a little girl was already dressed and waiting for her daddy to pick her up. It was normal to move away and not tell the father where his daughter was living. Mr. Davis pulled out another folder. Your Honor, I have evidence of Mr. Thompson's character from his employer, his neighbors, and his community. Marcus's boss had written a letter explaining that Marcus was a reliable employee who never missed work and always finished his projects on time. His neighbors had written letters saying that Marcus was a kind, responsible man who was always willing to help others. The pastor from Marcus's church had written about Marcus's volunteer work and his dedication to his faith. Mr. Thompson coaches youth soccer in his spare time, Mr. Davis said. He volunteers at the food bank every month. He helps elderly neighbors with yard work and grocery shopping. This is clearly a man of good character who would provide a positive influence for his daughter. Judge Harrison set the letters aside without reading them. Character references from friends are not always reliable, he said. People don't always show their true selves to everyone. Marcus felt like he was in a nightmare. Every piece of evidence that showed he was a good father was being dismissed. Every proof of his love for Zoe was being ignored. What did the judge want from him? What would it take to prove that he deserved to be in his daughter's life? Your Honor, Mr. Davis said, his voice getting more urgent. I have one more piece of evidence that I believe is crucial to this case. He handed the judge a folder containing photos of Marcus and Zoe together. There were pictures from birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations, and quiet moments at home. In every photo, Zoe was smiling. She looked happy, safe, and loved. Marcus remembered taking most of these pictures. There was one of Zoe on her first day of school, holding Marcus's hand and grinning with excitement. There was another of them building a snowman in their backyard, both of them covered in snow and laughing. There was a picture from Zoe's soccer game, where she was running toward Marcus with her arms outstretched, her face glowing with pride after scoring a goal. These photos show the bond between father and daughter, Mr. Davis explained. You can see how happy Zoe is with her father. This is not the face of a child who is afraid or uncomfortable. This is a child who loves her daddy. Judge Harrison looked at the photos for maybe 30 seconds. Marcus watched the judge's face, hoping to see some sign of understanding, some recognition of the love that was so obvious in every picture. Photos can be misleading, Judge Harrison said, closing the folder. Anyone can smile for a camera. Marcus felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Those photos weren't fake smiles. They were memories of the happiest moments of his life. They were proof of 8 years of bedtime stories, scraped knee kisses, homework help, and unconditional love. Mr. Davis looked frustrated. Your Honor, with all due respect, we have presented overwhelming evidence that Mr. Thompson is a loving, capable father who has a strong, positive relationship with his daughter. We have shown that Zoe's well-being improved when she lived with him and declined when she was separated from him. What more evidence do you need? Judge Harrison's face hardened. Mr. Davis, I will determine what evidence is sufficient in my courtroom. The materials you have presented are noted, but they do not address my concerns about the best interests of the child. Marcus stood up, his body shaking with emotion. Your Honor, please. Just tell me what your concerns are. Tell me what I need to prove. I have a good job, a safe home, and teachers who say I'm a great father. I have pictures that show how happy Zoe is with me. I have proof that I've tried everything to stay in her life. What else do you need? Mr. Thompson, Judge Harrison said sternly, you will not question my judgment. I have reviewed your evidence and I find it insufficient to warrant a change in custody. Insufficient. 8 years of love was insufficient. A stable home was insufficient. Good grades and happy teachers were insufficient. Marcus felt like he was drowning in a sea of injustice and no one was throwing him a rope. Mrs. Patterson in the back of the courtroom wiped tears from her eyes. She had seen this before. She had lived through this herself 20 years ago, when her own son fought for custody of his children. The system hadn't been fair then either. The young white couple near the front looked shocked. They couldn't understand how all that evidence could be dismissed so easily. The woman whispered to her husband, "If that was us up there, the judge would have given us everything we asked for." Marcus looked at his folder full of evidence, all the proof of his love that apparently meant nothing. He thought about Zoe, probably in school, right? Judge Harrison straightened his papers and looked at Marcus with cold, final eyes. The courtroom was so quiet that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. This was it. This was the moment that would decide whether he could be a real father to Zoe or just a stranger who sent birthday cards. After reviewing all the evidence presented, Judge Harrison began, his voice formal and distant. "I have made my decision regarding the custody of Zoe Thompson." Marcus gripped the edge of the table in front of him. His knuckles turned white. Mr. Davis put a hand on his shoulder, but Marcus barely felt it. Everything in the world had narrowed down to this one moment, these next few words from the judge. "The current custody arrangement will remain in place," Judge Harrison announced. "Zoe Thompson will continue to live with her mother, Sarah Thompson." Marcus felt like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. The room started to spin. Those words echoed in his head. Remain in place, remain in place, remain in place, but the judge wasn't finished. He continued speaking, and each word was like a nail being hammered into Marcus's heart. "Furthermore," Judge Harrison said, "given the contentious nature of this case and concerns about stability, I am ordering that Mr. Thompson's visitation rights be modified." Modified. That word sent ice through Marcus's veins. Modified how? What did that mean? Mr. Thompson will be allowed supervised visitation with his daughter once per month for 4 hours. These visits will take place at the Family Services Center, under the supervision of a court-appointed social worker. Once per month, 4 hours, supervised. Marcus felt like he couldn't breathe. He had been seeing Zoe every other weekend before Sarah started making excuses and canceling visits. Now he would get to see his daughter 12 times a year, and only with a stranger watching every word he said. "Your Honor," Mr. Davis said, standing up quickly, "this is extremely restrictive. My client has shown no signs of being a danger to his daughter. There is no evidence that supervision is necessary." Judge Harrison looked annoyed. "Mr. Davis, I have made my decision based on what I believe is in the best interest of the child. Supervised visitation will allow the court to monitor the relationship and ensure the child's safety and well-being." Safety? Marcus had never hurt Zoe in his life. He had never even raised his voice at her. The worst thing he had ever done was give her too much ice cream for dessert. What safety concerns could there possibly be? "But, Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice cracking, "I've never done anything to hurt Zoe. I've never missed a visit when I was allowed to have one. I've never been late picking her up or bringing her back. What have I done wrong?" Judge Harrison's eyes were hard as stone. "Mr. Thompson, the court must consider many factors when determining custody arrangements. Sometimes what a parent wants is not what is best for the child." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest like fire. What's best for Zoe is having her father in her life. What's best for her is living in a home where someone helps her with homework every night. What's best for her is being with someone who loves her more than anything in the world. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Harrison said sharply, "you will not lecture me about what is best for children. I have been making these decisions for 20 years. 20 years of destroying families, Marcus thought. 20 years of separating children from loving parents. 20 years of making decisions based on prejudice instead of evidence." Marcus looked around the courtroom at all the people who had witnessed this injustice. Mrs. Patterson was crying openly now. The young white couple looked horrified. Even the court reporter, who had probably seen hundreds of these cases, looked uncomfortable. "Your Honor, please," Marcus begged, his voice breaking completely now. "She's my little girl. She's all I have. I know you think I'm not good enough for her somehow, but I love her. I love her so much it hurts. She needs me." Judge Harrison showed no emotion at all. "Mr. Thompson, love alone is not sufficient to determine custody. The court must consider stability, environment, and what will provide the child with the best opportunities for success in life." Success in life. Marcus thought about all the successful people he knew. His boss, who worked 60 hours a week and barely knew his own children. His neighbor, who had plenty of money but was always angry and stressed. His brother, who lived in a big house but fought with his wife every day. Marcus wasn't rich, but he was successful in the ways that mattered. He was successful at making Zoe laugh when she was sad. He was successful at helping her feel brave when she was scared. He was successful at making her feel loved and special every single day, but apparently none of that mattered to Judge Harrison. "This decision is final," the judge said, picking up his gavel. "The custody order will be modified as I have stated. Mr. Thompson's first supervised visit will be scheduled through family services within 30 days. 30 days. Marcus wouldn't see his daughter for 30 days and then only for 4 hours with a stranger watching them. How could he explain to Zoe why Daddy could only see her once a month? How could he tell her why someone had to watch them play together like he was dangerous? "Your Honor, wait," Marcus said, standing up so fast his chair almost fell over. "Please, just wait. Let me ask you one question." Judge Harrison looked irritated but didn't pick up his gavel yet. "If I was a white man with the exact same job, the exact same house, the exact same evidence, would you have made the same decision?" The courtroom went completely silent. Mr. Davis grabbed Marcus's arm, trying to get him to sit down. But Marcus didn't care anymore. He had nothing left to lose. Judge Harrison's face turned red with anger. "Mr. Thompson, that is completely inappropriate. This decision has nothing to do with race. It is based solely on the best interests of the child." "Then explain to me what those interests are," Marcus said, his voice getting stronger. "Explain to me how it's in Zoe's best interest to barely see her father. Explain to me how it's better for her to live with a mother who lies and cancels visits than with a father who has never missed a single school event." "Mr. Thompson, you are out of order," Judge Harrison said, raising his voice. "No, Your Honor, you are out of order," Marcus shot back. "You've ignored every piece of evidence we presented. You've dismissed letters from teachers who know Zoe better than you do. You've looked at pictures of a happy little girl with her father and called them meaningless. You've taken a man with a clean record, a steady job, and a safe home and treated him like he's a criminal." "That's enough," Judge Harrison shouted, standing up. "Mr. Thompson, you are in contempt of court." But Marcus wasn't finished. 8 years of love was pouring out of him in words. "I wake up every morning thinking about her. I go to sleep every night missing her. I drive past her school just hoping to catch a glimpse of her at recess. I buy her Christmas presents that she'll never get and birthday cakes that she'll never eat. I have a little girl who probably thinks her daddy doesn't love her anymore. And it's all because you've decided that somehow I'm not good enough to be her father." Judge Harrison slammed his gavel down hard. "Mr. Thompson, you will be silent or I will have you removed from this courtroom." Marcus felt Mr. Davis pulling on his arm, trying to get him to sit down. The lawyer was whispering urgently, "Stop, Marcus, you're making it worse, but how could it get worse?" Marcus had already lost everything. His daughter would grow up thinking he didn't fight for her. She would grow up believing that her father had abandoned her. She would grow up without bedtime stories and soccer games and help with homework. Marcus looked at Judge Harrison one last time. "Your Honor, I hope you can sleep at night knowing what you've done to a little girl who just wants her daddy." Judge Harrison raised his gavel again, ready to make his decision official and final. Ready to destroy what was left of Marcus's relationship with his daughter. Ready to hammer the last nail into the coffin of a father's love. "By the power vested in me by the state," Judge Harrison began, "I hereby order—" Marcus closed his eyes. He couldn't watch. He couldn't see the moment when everything ended. He thought about Zoe's smile, her laugh, the way she used to run to him when he picked her up from school. He thought about all the memories they would never make, all the moments they would never share. The gavel was coming down. The final word was about to be spoken. 8 years of being a father was about to be reduced to 12 supervised visits a year. But then, just as Judge Harrison was about to bring the gavel down, something happened that no one in the courtroom expected. The doors burst open. The heavy courtroom doors flew open with such force that they slammed against the walls. Everyone in the courtroom turned to look. Judge Harrison's gavel stopped in midair, just inches from striking the final blow that would seal Marcus's fate. A woman in a dark blue suit strode into the courtroom with the confidence of someone who had every right to be there. She was tall and serious-looking, with short black hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. On her jacket was a gold badge that caught the light as she walked. Federal Agent Rebecca Martinez, FBI, she announced in a clear, strong voice that carried to every corner of the courtroom. She held up her credentials for everyone to see. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but I have urgent information that directly relates to this custody case. The courtroom erupted in whispers. People turned to each other with shocked faces. Mrs. Patterson sat up straighter in her seat. The young couple near the front craned their necks to get a better look. Even the court reporter stopped typing and stared. Judge Harrison looked furious at being interrupted. His face was red and his hand still held the gavel in the air like a weapon. Agent Martinez, this is highly irregular. I am in the middle of making a ruling in this case. Agent Martinez walked down the center aisle of the courtroom, her footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. She carried a thick manila folder and what looked like a laptop computer. Her expression was serious and professional. Your Honor, I understand this is unusual, she said, stopping a few feet from the judge's bench. But the FBI has been conducting an investigation that has led us directly to this courtroom and this specific custody case. The information I have could dramatically change your ruling. Marcus felt his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. What was happening? Why was an FBI agent here? Did this have something to do with Zoe? Was his daughter in danger? Mr. Davis looked just as confused as Marcus. He leaned over and whispered, I have no idea what this is about. Judge Harrison set his gavel down but kept his hand on it. Agent Martinez, what kind of investigation could possibly involve a simple custody dispute? Agent Martinez opened her folder and pulled out several official-looking documents. Your Honor, our investigation involves child endangerment, fraud, and interference with custody rights across state lines. Ms. Sarah Thompson. The mother in this case is a person of interest in our investigation. Sarah Thompson. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Sarah was being investigated by the FBI for child endangerment? What had she done to Zoe? Furthermore, Agent Martinez continued, our investigation has uncovered evidence that suggests this custody case may have been influenced by fraudulent information provided to the court. Judge Harrison's face went pale. What kind of fraudulent information? Agent Martinez approached the judge's bench and handed him a set of documents. Your Honor, I have court records from 3 different states showing a pattern of behavior by Ms. Thompson. She has a history of making false allegations against fathers in custody cases, moving frequently to avoid court orders, and using children as pawns in elaborate fraud schemes. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Sarah had done this before? To other fathers? To other children? Agent Martinez opened her laptop and turned it toward the judge. We have been tracking Ms. Thompson's activities for the past 18 months. She has moved between Oregon, Nevada, and California, each time establishing temporary residence just long enough to file for custody modifications. Judge Harrison stared at the computer screen. Marcus could see the judge's expression changing from anger to confusion to something that might have been concern. In each case, Agent Martinez explained, Ms. Thompson has made similar allegations against the children's fathers. She claims they are unstable, that the neighborhoods they live in are dangerous, that the fathers have questionable associations. But our investigation shows that these allegations are false and are part of a pattern designed to gain full custody for financial benefit. Marcus felt dizzy. Sarah had been lying about him, about his neighborhood, about his character, and she had done the same thing to other fathers. Agent Martinez pulled out another document. Your Honor, Ms. Thompson has been collecting benefits from multiple states by claiming to be a single mother with no support from the father. She has also been receiving payments from a boyfriend who is currently under investigation for a benefits fraud scheme involving false custody claims. The courtroom was completely silent except for the sound of papers rustling as Judge Harrison looked through the FBI's evidence. Marcus watched the judge's face and saw something he had never seen before. Doubt. Agent Martinez, Judge Harrison said slowly, are you saying that Ms. Thompson has deliberately misled this court? Yes, Your Honor, and not just this court. We have evidence that she has done this in Oregon, Nevada, and California. She moves to a new state, files for emergency custody claiming the father is dangerous or unstable, and then uses the temporary custody orders to qualify for benefits. Agent Martinez turned to another page in her folder. We also have evidence that Ms. Thompson has been coaching the child to make statements about her father that are not true. Marcus felt like he had been hit by lightning. Zoe had been forced to lie about him. His sweet, honest little girl had been taught to say bad things about her daddy? What kind of statements? Judge Harrison asked. Ms. Thompson has been telling the child that her father doesn't love her, that he doesn't want to see her, and that he's dangerous. We have recordings of phone calls where Ms. Thompson is heard coaching Zoe on what to say if anyone asks about her father. Recordings. The FBI had recordings of Sarah telling Zoe to lie about Marcus. Marcus felt sick thinking about his little girl being forced to say things that weren't true. Agent Martinez continued. We also have evidence that Ms. Thompson has been intercepting court documents and communications meant for Mr. Thompson. She has been receiving notices about hearings and custody modifications and deliberately not informing Mr. Thompson about them. Judge Harrison looked shocked.
She's been hiding court documents from the father?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, there have been 3 previous hearings in this case that Mr. Thompson was never notified about. Ms. Thompson received the notices and simply threw them away. Marcus felt his legs go weak. There had been other hearings where decisions were made about his daughter, and he wasn't even told they were happening. Mr. Davis stood up, his face red with anger. Your Honor, if this is true, then every decision made in those hearings should be considered invalid. Agent Martinez nodded. That's correct. And there's more. She pulled out a thick stack of papers. We have financial records showing that Ms. Thompson has been using Zoe as a way to collect benefits from multiple sources. She's been claiming emergency assistance in different states, each time using a different custody story. Judge Harrison was flipping through the FBI's evidence faster now. Marcus could see the judge's hands shaking slightly as he read. Agent Martinez, this is very disturbing, Judge Harrison said. How long has this investigation been going on? 18 months, Your Honor. Ms. Thompson came to our attention when a father in Oregon contacted our office claiming that his ex-wife had kidnapped his children and moved to Nevada. When we investigated, we found a pattern of similar cases across multiple states. Agent Martinez opened her laptop again and showed Judge Harrison something on the screen. We have been tracking Ms. Thompson's movements and her various benefit applications. She has been using Zoe to fraudulently collect over $40,000 in assistance payments. $40,000. Sarah had been using Zoe to steal money from the government while keeping her away from her father. Your Honor, Agent Martinez said, I have a warrant for Ms. Thompson's arrest, but more importantly for this hearing, I have evidence that everything she has told this court about Mr. Thompson is false. Judge Harrison looked up from the papers. For the first time since the hearing began, he looked directly at Marcus. But now, instead of cold dismissal, Marcus saw something different in the judge's eyes. Maybe it was understanding. Maybe it was regret. Agent Martinez, where is Ms. Thompson now? We believe she is preparing to leave the state again, Your Honor. We have been monitoring her activities and expect her to move within the next few days. That's why we needed to act quickly. Judge Harrison set down the papers and looked around the courtroom. Everyone was staring at him, waiting to see what he would do next. Marcus felt hope beginning to grow in his chest for the first time in months. The FBI was here. They had proof that Sarah had been lying. They had evidence that Marcus was exactly who he said he was, a loving father who just wanted his daughter back. Agent Martinez closed her laptop and looked at Judge Harrison. Your Honor, I respectfully request that you delay any ruling in this case until Ms. Thompson can be apprehended and until Mr. Thompson has a chance to review all the evidence that has been hidden from him. Judge Harrison picked up his gavel, but this time Marcus wasn't afraid. This time he felt like justice might finally be coming to his courtroom. Agent Martinez opened another folder and spread more documents across the judge's desk. Marcus watched as she laid out what looked like photographs, bank records, and official reports. Each piece of paper seemed to tell a story that Marcus had never heard before. Your Honor, Agent Martinez began, what I'm about to share with you shows the true extent of Ms. Thompson's deception. This goes far beyond simple custody interference. Judge Harrison leaned forward, studying the documents more carefully than he had looked at anything else all morning. Marcus noticed that the judge's entire demeanor had changed. Gone was the dismissive attitude and cold stare. Now Judge Harrison looked focused and concerned. These bank records, Agent Martinez said, pointing to a stack of papers, show deposits from welfare offices in 4 different states over the past 2 years. Ms. Thompson has been claiming emergency assistance as a single mother fleeing domestic violence. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. Domestic violence? Sarah had told people that he was violent. Agent Martinez continued. In Oregon, she told authorities that Mr. Thompson had threatened her and Zoe, and that she had to flee in the middle of the night for their safety. In Nevada, she claimed he had a drinking problem and was physically abusive. In California, she said he was involved with dangerous people and that Zoe was afraid of him. Each lie felt like a physical blow to Marcus. He had never touched Sarah in anger. He had never threatened anyone. He barely drank alcohol, maybe a beer on the weekend while watching football. And dangerous people? His biggest crime was sometimes driving 5 miles over the speed limit. None of these allegations were ever reported to police, Agent Martinez explained. Ms. Thompson only made these claims to social services when applying for emergency benefits. She knew that certain claims would fast-track her applications and increase her monthly payments. Judge Harrison shook his head in disbelief. She was lying to get money? Yes, Your Honor, but it gets worse. Agent Martinez pulled out a different set of documents. We discovered that Ms. Thompson has been coaching Zoe to repeat these false stories. We have recordings from social services interviews where Zoe clearly appears to be reciting rehearsed answers. The thought of Zoe being forced to lie about him made Marcus feel sick. His little girl, who used to tell him everything, who trusted him completely, had been taught to say that her daddy was bad. Agent Martinez opened her laptop and turned it toward the judge. This is a recording from a social services office in Nevada 6 months ago. You can hear Ms. Thompson in the background prompting Zoe on what to say. Judge Harrison put on his glasses and listened as Agent Martinez played the audio. Marcus could hear Zoe's small voice, but she sounded different. Usually Zoe spoke with confidence and joy. In this recording, she sounded nervous and uncertain. My daddy is mean to me, Zoe's voice said quietly. Then, barely audible in the background, Sarah's voice could be heard whispering. Tell them about the yelling. He yells at me a lot, Zoe continued. But she sounded like she was reading from a script. And what else? Sarah's voice prompted. He makes me scared sometimes. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. Zoe had never been scared of him. She used to run to him when she was afraid of thunderstorms or monsters under her bed. She used to fall asleep in his arms feeling completely safe and loved. Agent Martinez stopped the recording. Your Honor, you can hear the child being coached. This is not a natural conversation. This is a little girl being taught to lie about her father. Judge Harrison looked stunned. This is child abuse. Yes, it is, Agent Martinez agreed. And there's more evidence of Ms. Thompson's manipulation. She pulled out a series of photographs. These pictures were taken by our surveillance team over the past month. The photos showed Sarah at what appeared to be expensive restaurants, shopping at high-end stores and driving a new car. In several pictures, she was with a man Marcus didn't recognize. Ms. Thompson has been living a lifestyle that doesn't match her claimed income as a struggling single mother, Agent Martinez explained. The man in these photos is Robert Chen, who is also under investigation for benefit fraud. Agent Martinez pulled out another document. Mr. Chen has been running a scheme where he connects single mothers with ways to maximize their government benefits through false custody claims. He gets a percentage of the money they receive. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Sarah had been working with a criminal to steal money from the government, and she was using Zoe to do it. Your Honor, Agent Martinez continued, we have evidence that Mr. Chen has been advising Ms. Thompson on how to present her case in court. He coached her on what to say about Mr. Thompson and about the neighborhoods he lives in. That explained the judge's strange questions about Marcus's neighborhood and his lifestyle choices. Sarah had been given specific talking points, designed to make Marcus look bad. Agent Martinez pulled out a thick folder. We also have evidence that Ms. Thompson has been intercepting Mr. Thompson's mail and court documents. She rented a P.O. box using a false address and had all court communications redirected there. Judge Harrison looked at the postal records. She was stealing his mail? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Thompson never received notices about several court hearings. He never got copies of court orders or custody modifications. Ms. Thompson has been controlling all the information flow to make sure Mr. Thompson couldn't defend himself. Marcus remembered all the times he had called the courthouse asking why he hadn't received paperwork. The clerks had told him everything had been mailed to his address, but he never got anything. Now he knew why. Agent Martinez opened her laptop again. Your Honor, I want to show you something else. This is security footage from Zoe's school in Nevada. The video showed the school parking lot. Marcus watched as Sarah's car pulled up and Sarah got out. But she wasn't alone. The man from the photographs, Robert Chen, was with her. Mr. Chen has been posing as Ms. Thompson's boyfriend and sometimes as Zoe's stepfather, Agent Martinez explained. He has been involved in school meetings and medical appointments, presenting himself as part of Zoe's family. In the video, Marcus watched as Zoe came out of the school building. She walked slowly toward the car, her head down. She didn't look happy to see Sarah or the man. She looked tired and sad. You can see that the child appears withdrawn and unhappy, Agent Martinez pointed out. This is very different from the pictures Mr. Thompson submitted showing Zoe's demeanor when she was with her father. Judge Harrison looked at the video and then back at the photos Marcus had submitted earlier. The difference was startling. In Marcus's photos, Zoe was bright and energetic, always smiling. In this school video, she looked like a different child entirely. Agent Martinez pulled out more documents. Your Honor, we also have medical records that show concerning patterns. Zoe has been taken to emergency rooms in 3 different states for what Ms. Thompson claimed were anxiety attacks. Marcus felt his heart racing. Anxiety attacks? Zoe never had anxiety attacks when she lived with me. Agent Martinez nodded. The medical reports show that Zoe has been experiencing severe stress and anxiety since being separated from her father. Doctors in all 3 states recommended family counseling and suggested that Zoe might benefit from more contact with her father. Judge Harrison read through the medical reports. Ms. Thompson ignored these recommendations? Yes, Your Honor. In fact, when doctors suggested that Zoe's anxiety might be related to missing her father, Ms. Thompson would immediately move to a different state and find new doctors. Agent Martinez pulled out her final folder. Your Honor, perhaps most disturbing of all, we have evidence that Ms. Thompson has been telling Zoe that her father doesn't want to see her anymore. She handed Judge Harrison a transcript of a recorded phone call. This is a conversation between Ms. Thompson and her sister, recorded 3 weeks ago. Judge Harrison read the transcript silently, and Marcus watched his face grow more and more troubled. In this conversation, Agent Martinez explained, Ms. Thompson admits to her sister that she has been telling Zoe that Mr. Thompson moved away and doesn't want to be her father anymore. She laughs about how easy it is to make a child believe her father has abandoned her. Marcus felt like his world was crashing down around him. Zoe thought he had abandoned her. His little girl believed that her daddy had stopped loving her and had moved away without saying goodbye. Your Honor, Agent Martinez said, closing her folders, Mr. Thompson is not the unstable, dangerous man that Ms. Thompson has portrayed him to be. He is the victim of an elaborate fraud scheme that has torn his family apart and traumatized his daughter. Judge Harrison sat back in his chair, looking overwhelmed by everything he had heard. Marcus could see that the judge was struggling to process the magnitude of Sarah's deception. Agent Martinez, Judge Harrison said slowly, what are you asking this court to do? Agent Martinez stood up straighter. Your Honor, I am asking you to immediately reverse any custody orders that were based on false information. I'm asking you to grant emergency custody to Mr. Thompson while we locate and arrest Ms. Thompson, and I'm asking you to order immediate psychological evaluation for Zoe to assess the damage that has been done by her mother's manipulation. Judge Harrison looked at Marcus for a long moment. Marcus could see. Judge Harrison set down the FBI documents and removed his glasses. He rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand, and for the first time since Marcus had entered the courtroom, the judge looked like a human being instead of a cold authority figure. Mr. Thompson, Judge Harrison said again, his voice much quieter than before. I owe you a profound apology. Marcus felt his legs trembling. After hours of being dismissed and ignored, he wasn't sure how to respond to the judge's sudden change in tone. Judge Harrison stood up from his chair and looked out at the courtroom. Everyone was watching him, waiting to see what he would say next. Mrs. Patterson leaned forward in her seat. The young couple held hands tightly. Even the court reporter had stopped typing and was staring at the judge. Agent Martinez, Judge Harrison said, your evidence has revealed something that goes far beyond this individual case. It has exposed a fundamental failure in my courtroom. Agent Martinez nodded but remained professional. Your Honor, with respect, this case shows how easily the system can be manipulated when proper procedures aren't followed. Judge Harrison's face reddened slightly. Marcus could see that the judge was embarrassed, maybe even ashamed. Agent Martinez, you're being polite. What this case shows is how my own prejudices nearly destroyed a family. The courtroom was completely silent. Marcus had never heard a judge admit to making a mistake, especially not one this big. Judge Harrison walked around his desk and stood closer to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, I dismissed your evidence without properly reviewing it. I questioned your character based on assumptions that had nothing to do with your ability to be a father. I allowed my biases to cloud my judgment. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief, anger, and hope all mixed together. Your Honor, Marcus said, his voice shaking. All I ever wanted was to be Zoe's father. I never understood why you couldn't see that. Judge Harrison nodded slowly. I should have seen it. The evidence was right there in front of me. Your daughter's grades, her teacher's letters, the character references from your community. But I was looking at you through a lens of prejudice that prevented me from seeing the truth. Agent Martinez spoke up. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson's case is unfortunately not unique. Our investigation has identified similar patterns in family courts across several states. Judge Harrison looked troubled. What do you mean? We've found that certain demographic groups face disproportionate challenges in custody cases, Agent Martinez explained. Fathers, particularly fathers of color, often have their evidence scrutinized more harshly and their character questioned more aggressively than other parents. Marcus felt a mixture of validation and sadness. He had suspected that his race played a role in how he was treated, but hearing it confirmed by an FBI agent made it real in a way that hurt deeply. Judge Harrison looked at the FBI evidence again. Agent Martinez, you mentioned that this investigation has been ongoing for 18 months. How many other families have been affected by similar schemes? We've identified at least 37 cases across 6 states where fathers have been fraudulently separated from their children through false allegations and manipulated custody proceedings. 37 families, 37 fathers who had lost their children to lies and manipulation, 37 children who had been used as pawns in criminal schemes. Your Honor, Agent Martinez continued, our investigation has also revealed concerning patterns in how these cases were handled by various courts. We've found that certain judges appear more susceptible to manipulation tactics used by perpetrators like Ms. Thompson. Judge Harrison sat down heavily. Are you saying that other judges have made the same mistakes I made? Yes, Your Honor. But what makes your case different is what happens next. You have the opportunity to correct this injustice and help us prevent it from happening to other families. Marcus looked around the courtroom and saw that Mrs. Patterson was nodding vigorously. She had lived through this kind of injustice herself. The young white couple looked shocked but supportive. Everyone in the room seemed to understand that something bigger than one custody case was happening here. Judge Harrison picked up the medical reports about Zoe's anxiety attacks. Agent Martinez, you said that Zoe has been suffering from anxiety and stress since being separated from her father. What kind of psychological damage are we talking about? According to the medical experts we've consulted, Agent Martinez replied, children who are manipulated into believing false things about their parents can suffer long-term psychological trauma. They may have trouble trusting adults, forming healthy relationships, and understanding their own identity. Marcus felt sick thinking about what Zoe had been going through. His happy, confident little girl had been turned into an anxious child who believed her father had abandoned her. The good news, Agent Martinez added, is that children are resilient. With proper counseling and a return to stable, loving relationships, most children can recover from this kind of manipulation. Judge Harrison looked at Marcus directly. Mr. Thompson, I need you to understand something. The way I treated you today was wrong. I let my assumptions about your race, your neighborhood, and your lifestyle affect my judgment. That is inexcusable. Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of him wanted to be angry at the judge for what he had put Marcus through, but another part of him was grateful that the judge was finally seeing the truth. Your Honor, Marcus said carefully, I just want my daughter back. I want her to know that her father never stopped loving her and never stopped fighting for her. Judge Harrison nodded. That's exactly what's going to happen. But I also want you to know that your case is going to help other fathers in similar situations. Agent Martinez opened her laptop again. Your Honor, with your permission, We would like to use this case as part of a larger investigation into judicial bias in family courts. Mr. Thompson's experience could help us identify and correct systemic problems. Judge Harrison looked uncertain. What would that involve? We would like to review other custody cases from your court over the past 5 years, Agent Martinez explained. We're looking for patterns that might indicate when bias affected decisions. This isn't about punishment, Your Honor. It's about education and reform. Marcus realized that his nightmare could actually help other fathers avoid the same suffering. His pain could have a purpose, Your Honor, Marcus said. If my case can help other dads get their kids back, then something good will come out of all this. Judge Harrison looked at Marcus with respect for the first time. Mr. Thompson, you are a better man than I gave you credit for. You have every right to be angry with me, but instead you're thinking about how to help others. Agent Martinez pulled out another document. Your Honor, there's something else you should know. Our investigation has revealed that the judicial bias training programs currently in use are inadequate. We're working with legal experts to develop better training that addresses unconscious bias and manipulation tactics. Judge Harrison straightened up in his chair. I would like to be part of that program. What I did today, what I almost did, cannot happen again. The judge looked around the courtroom at all the people who had witnessed this extraordinary hearing. This case has taught me that justice is not just about following procedures. It's about seeing people as they really are, not as our prejudices tell us they are. Marcus felt hope growing in his chest. Not just hope for getting Zoe back, but hope that other families wouldn't have to go through what he had experienced. Judge Harrison picked up his gavel, but this time Marcus wasn't afraid of what the judge might say. Agent Martinez, Judge Harrison said, what do you need from this court to move forward with your investigation and to reunite Mr. Thompson with his daughter? Agent Martinez smiled for the first time since entering the courtroom. Your Honor, I need you to issue an emergency custody order placing Zoe with her father immediately. I also need you to authorize law enforcement to locate and apprehend Ms. Thompson. Judge Harrison looked at Marcus. Mr. Thompson, are you ready to be a full-time father again? Marcus felt his heart soar. Your Honor, I've been ready for 8 years. I've never stopped being ready. Judge Harrison raised his gavel, and this time Marcus knew that justice was finally coming to his courtroom. Judge Harrison brought his gavel down with a firm, decisive sound that echoed through the courtroom. But this time, instead of ending Marcus's hopes, it marked the beginning of justice. By the authority granted to me by this court, Judge Harrison announced, his voice strong and clear, I hereby reverse all previous custody orders in the case of Thompson versus Thompson. Emergency custody of Zoe Thompson is immediately granted to her father, Marcus Thompson. Marcus felt his knees buckle. Mr. Davis grabbed his arm to steady him as the words sank in. Emergency custody. Immediately, Zoe was coming home. Furthermore, Judge Harrison continued, I am authorizing law enforcement to locate Zoe Thompson and ensure her immediate safety and return to her father. Agent Martinez, you have the court's full cooperation in apprehending Sarah Thompson. Agent Martinez nodded professionally. Thank you, Your Honor. We have teams standing by. We should have Zoe located within the next few hours. A few hours. Marcus was going to see his daughter in just a few hours. After 6 months of supervised visits that never happened. After 6 months of wondering if she was safe. After 6 months of thinking she believed he had abandoned her, he was going to hold his little girl. Again, the courtroom erupted in quiet celebration. Mrs. Patterson was wiping tears from her eyes and smiling broadly. The young white couple was hugging each other. Even the court reporter looked relieved and happy. Judge Harrison wasn't finished. I am also ordering that Zoe receive immediate psychological evaluation and counseling to help her understand the truth about her father and to address any trauma she may have experienced. Agent Martinez opened her laptop. Your Honor, we've already contacted Dr. Sarah Chen, a child psychologist who specializes in cases involving parental manipulation. She's prepared to work with Zoe starting as early as tomorrow. Good, Judge Harrison said. I want Zoe to understand that her father never stopped loving her and never stopped fighting for her. Marcus thought about that first conversation with Zoe. How would he explain what had happened? How would he help her understand that everything her mother had told her was a lie? It would be difficult, but at least they would face it together. Agent Martinez's phone buzzed. She looked at it quickly and then addressed the court. Your Honor, I just received word that my team has located Zoe. She's currently at Roosevelt Elementary School in Carson City, Nevada. She appears to be safe and unharmed. Marcus felt relief flood through him like a wave. Zoe was safe. She was in school, probably doing math or reading, having no idea that her whole world was about to change for the better. How quickly can we get her back to her father? Judge Harrison asked. Our agents are coordinating with local law enforcement and child services, Agent Martinez replied. Zoe should be on a plane back here by this evening. Mr. Thompson, you could have your daughter home tonight. Tonight. Marcus was going to tuck Zoe into her own bed in her own room in their own house tonight. He was going to read her a bedtime story and kiss her forehead and tell her how much he had missed her. Judge Harrison addressed Marcus directly. Mr. Thompson, I want you to know that this court will provide any support you need during Zoe's transition back home. Counseling services, educational support, whatever it takes. Thank you, Your Honor, Marcus managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. I just want her to be happy again. Agent Martinez closed her laptop. Your Honor, there's one more thing. We have arrested Robert Chen, the man who was running the benefit fraud scheme. He has agreed to cooperate with our investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence. Judge Harrison nodded. And Sarah Thompson? We expect to apprehend her within the next 24 hours, Agent Martinez replied. She's been using credit cards and staying in motels, so she's left a clear trail. Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions about Sarah's arrest. He was angry about what she had done to Zoe, but he also felt sad that Zoe would have to deal with her mother going to prison. Agent Martinez, Judge Harrison said, I want to commend you and your team for this investigation. You've not only reunited a father with his daughter, but you've exposed a serious problem in our family court system. Agent Martinez nodded. Your Honor, this case will be used as a training example for judges, social workers, and law enforcement officers across the country. Mr. Thompson's experience will help prevent other families from going through similar situations. Judge Harrison turned to address the entire courtroom. I want everyone here to understand what we've witnessed today. We've seen how prejudice and bias can corrupt justice, and we've seen how courage and truth can overcome that corruption. The judge looked at Marcus again. Mr. Thompson, your dignity and perseverance in the face of injustice is an example to all of us. You never gave up on your daughter even when it seemed hopeless. Marcus thought about all those nights when he had wanted to give up, when the pain of missing Zoe was almost too much to bear. But something inside him had kept fighting, kept believing that someday the truth would come out. Your Honor, Marcus said, I couldn't give up on her. She's my daughter. She's everything to me. Agent Martinez gathered her documents. Mr. Thompson, I'll need you to come with me to the airport. We want you to be there when Zoe arrives so she can see you immediately. Marcus nodded eagerly. Yes, of course. I want to be the first person she sees. Judge Harrison stood up from his chair. Before we adjourn, I want to make one more statement. For the record, he looked around the courtroom at all the people who had witnessed this remarkable day. What happened here today is a reminder that our justice system is only as fair as the people who operate it. I failed Mr. Thompson and his daughter because I allowed my biases to override the evidence. But we've also seen that the system can correct itself when good people step forward with the truth. Mrs. Patterson stood up in the back of the courtroom and began clapping. Soon, everyone in the room was applauding. For Marcus, for Agent Martinez, for justice finally being served. Judge Harrison waited for the applause to die down. Mr. Thompson, I want you to know that I will be personally reviewing every custody case I've decided over the past 5 years. If I find other situations where bias may have affected my judgment, I will work to correct those injustices as well. Marcus felt overwhelmed by everything that was happening. Just a few hours ago, he was facing the loss of his daughter forever. Now he was going to pick her up at the airport and bring her home where she belonged. 2 hours later, Marcus stood at the airport gate, his heart pounding with excitement and nervousness. Agent Martinez was beside him along with Dr. Chen, the child psychologist who would help Zoe understand what had happened. Mr. Thompson, Dr. Chen said gently, Zoe is going to be confused and may be scared at first. She's been told for months that you didn't want to see her. It may take time for her to trust that you're really here to stay. Marcus nodded. I understand. I'll be patient with her. I'll do whatever it takes. The plane landed, and Marcus watched through the window as passengers began to exit. Then he saw her, a small figure walking slowly down the aisle, holding the hand of a female FBI agent. Zoe looked older than Marcus remembered and sadder, but she was still his little girl. Zoe walked into the terminal and looked around uncertainly. When her eyes found Marcus, she stopped walking. For a moment, father and daughter just stared at each other across the crowded airport. "Daddy," Zoe said in a small, uncertain voice. Marcus knelt down and opened his arms. "Yes, baby." "It's Daddy, I'm here." Zoe ran to him, then throwing herself into his arms with the force of 6 months of missing him. Marcus held her tight, feeling her small body trembling against his chest. "I thought you went away," Zoe sobbed. "Mommy said you didn't want me anymore." "Oh, sweetheart," Marcus whispered, stroking her hair. "That's not true. I never went away. I've been fighting to come back to you every single day. I love you more than anything in the whole world." Zoe pulled back to look at his face. "Really? You still want to be my daddy?" Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "I will always be your daddy, Zoe. Always. Nothing will ever change that." Dr. Chen approached them carefully. "Zoe, my name is Dr. Chen. I'm here to help you understand some things that have been confusing. Would that be okay?" Zoe looked at Marcus for reassurance. He nodded and squeezed her hand. "Dr. Chen is going to help us both, sweetheart. She's going to help us be a family again." Over the next few weeks, with Dr. Chen's help, Zoe slowly began to understand what had really happened. She learned that her father had never stopped trying to see her, that he had never moved away, and that he had never stopped loving her. The healing wasn't immediate or easy. Zoe had nightmares and moments of confusion, but gradually she began to laugh again. She began to trust again. She began to feel safe again. Marcus returned to work, but now he had a purpose beyond just paying bills. He became an advocate for fathers' rights and judicial reform. He spoke at conferences and training seminars, sharing his story to help prevent other families from experiencing what he and Zoe had endured. Judge Harrison kept his promise. He reviewed hundreds of his previous cases and found 12 situations where bias had likely affected his decisions. He worked with those families to correct the injustices, and he became a leading voice for judicial reform. Agent Martinez's investigation led to the arrest of 23 Papsur.